Yo, what is going on, everybody? This your boy Sean, aka Puff Comics 83, and welcome back to another episode of Talking Movies. I'm joined by my co-host Varangian Vigilante. How are you doing, sir?
Doing well. Had a wonderful week, and looking forward to talk Thomasine and Bushrod because this is a movie that, other than you mentioned it, especially when also we talked The Great Silence, because it was Philomena McGee's first movie that he told me it's actually like a western where she's in the lead role.
Yes.
So it's like it's the first time watching it.
And and
It's
and, and, and before you go on, it's Valentine's Day. That's why it was one choice to say, hey, let's talk this film on Valentine's Day. It's Western, it's got romance, and it's got gun shooting, car chasing too.
I do have to say that personally, I would have done without the car scenes because of course, 1911 cars. It's you still have like the feeling you could actually outrun them, or with a horse.
Hey, them early cars was like they ain't have no horsepower speed,
Yeah.
compared to the horses.
So yeah, it's a.
But I do like that element because it was such a new invention in the early 1900s. Like now, cars there, and there was this little talk about, is cars better than horses? Do we need to rely on horses now that we got vehicles? So I do like the difference that it added to the whole Western landscape. That the introduction of the automobile.
Yeah, because it's also, of course, like basically in the dying days of the West.
Yeah. So I thought it was a perfect addition to the show that the old days of the West is starting to die out, and here comes the new technology that's
yeah. I mean, that was like 3 years before the First World War, where industrialization became a whole different animal.
Yeah. But yes, Thomasine and Bushrod. This is like the big vehicle from Vanessa McGee. Max Julian was one of the co-writers and producers, and he really wanted to elevate Vanessa McGee because they were a couple at the time. They was a couple for like 5 years, and he really wanted her to be Cleopatra Jones. But the studio said, we're going to go with Tamara Dobson because, she had that height advantage, that made her stand out. And Julian took that to heart because, he really wanted to give McGee that role. So he made Thomasine and Bushrod as a vehicle for her to be the star. And he even takes a back seat, even though he's the secondary lead character. She has more of the shine in this film.
Yeah.
And he really emphasized that I'll just take a back seat. Because most people look at him and they think of Goldie from the Mac. Because that's what most people think of is the Mac. And he even was saying, that's how you break a horse, baby. And it's like, oh man, straight Mac mode.
Yeah.
But this was a big starring vehicle for McGee.
Yeah, and you can totally see that they were like lovers in real life because their on-screen chemistry totally reflects that. It's like they have great chemistry together. And in general, I think this movie has like a very good premise. Of course, it's a retelling of the old Bonnie and Clyde tale, which is just one of these classic, tragic love stories on the run from the law. And this is like in a 1911 setting. So it's I think like you said in the pre-show where I said I really wish this had like an Italian director that did some spaghetti western. So I think that the movie could have fulfilled like all of his potential that way, and so it's still a good movie. But like I say, it's like a diamond in the rough. It's like if you would polish it, then this movie would be more out there. Like I said, it's basically didn't even get a release here, and also like not a DVD release or anything. So it's available like on YouTube or like on the internet archives. Even though it was like distributed by Columbia Pictures, so you actually might think that it should be a little bit more available. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, like movies like this, especially during the height of blaxploitation, you know, it's not like, they want the action and crime, whereas a romantic western that takes the elements of Bonnie and Clyde, they like, we don't really care about that. We're gonna keep pushing forward with these blaxploitation films and push this to the wayside. And it really is a shame because there are a lot of hidden gems throughout all genres, from those early periods.
Yeah, it is, and especially like I said, that goes like beginning is like Fonetta McGee is like her character is the driving force, and she's so good at it. Especially when you compare her role from The Great Silence with the role here. Like in both ways, like she has to deal like with very difficult love scenarios. But here she's like the one who's like bringing the plot forward. That she's like a bounty hunter, and then find out that her ex-lover is like wanted. So she joins him then later for bank robberies, and also like within these bank robberies, also when they hijacked like the car, and the owner of the bank and the car was like then attacking them in it, and she was like the one like who killed him, and she actually so she's like really the one who is like in the driver's seat.
Even the photographer had to mention that like she felt like she was more in control than Bushrod was.
Yeah,
which is a completely different dynamic than what people are used to seeing.
Exactly, and for this to happen in a movie, like it takes a leading man that is very much in love, like to give up that position.
Yeah, and while they have their issues, on why they drifted apart and then they, come back together, it's the strong love they have for each other, regardless, that really drives them forward. And
he does get a slap.
Go ahead.
He does get a slap in.
He does get it, but she gets one in as well.
Yeah.
So again, it's like, but they still love and respect each other, regardless of it.
Yeah.
So again, the chemistry between the two was just off the charts, and you could tell Max Julien really put his foot forward to really have McGee be this type of strong female lead in this movie, and for Thomasine to be a bounty hunter at the beginning was like, okay, now you can't mess around with her, because now she can use her advances whenever somebody goes towards her, and use her advances to take advantage of the whole situation.
And that's also the good thing about it, that Donnie, that unlike nowadays where there's nothing bad about a female protagonist, about a strong female character in the movie, but it also has to be believable, and the way she wins the fights here is like believable, how like a woman can be on top. She fights dirty, she has a gun, and she uses also her sexuality to get to a point where she wants to be.
And every man that see her just falls in love with her.
Yeah, and also like the way when she was at the sheriff, and then she saw like the wanted poster for Bushrod, and like when she described it, like how she got it. So basically, she was like taking in plain sight, but the other guy was noticing other things.
And I'm gonna talk about George Murdoch for a bit. He played U.S. Marshal Bogarty, and one of the things that, like, the movie pulls a fast one on us when it comes to who the villain is.
Yeah.
But one of the things I did like about his character is how more unhinged he becomes because of his determination to not only nail these two, but to get revenge for Bushrod because of their past issues they had. So the more the movie goes, the more determined and unhinged he becomes to try and get these two. Go ahead.
Yeah, they should just have started it earlier, like that like in the beginning, there was like another big bad who killed Bushrod's sister, so he had first to take care of them. But this felt so fastly done that it almost feels like not rewarding enough. Until then, the big bad is introduced. So if they would have combined these two characters into one big bad guy, I think the movie would have been better for it, because as the audience you already could be locked in yeah, we want them to get away from this guy straight from the beginning.
And it's kind of a waste of a character that has an awesome name like Adolf the Butcher.
Well, in 1911 he could still claim that he's the most dangerous Adolf out there.
It is like you hear a name like that, you're like, okay, that's a cool bad guy name.
Yeah.
And then he gets taken out within the first 20 minutes of the film. I'm like, oh.
Yeah.
So it is kind of jarring.
Yeah, that felt a little bit anticlimactic.
And he really showed how evil he was when he took out the people inside the bank. It's like, his stick, his little umbrella has a knife to it, and he stabbed a woman.
Because he also, he had a really cool weapon that was underutilized in the fight later with Bushrod.
Yeah, he didn't. I don't even think it really came into play.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you introduce like such a cool villain with such an interesting, unique weapon, and then you make not use of it really.
Yeah, so I would have been a bit more satisfied had his end came like more at the halfway point in the film.
Yeah, or maybe that you even go so far to say that that the marshal like is in cahoots with the bank robber. Yeah.
I was thinking that too, like watching it. I'm like, Jamaican immigrants in Texas. It felt odd. But immigrants can go wherever they want once they come into America.
And it's like I don't think there was probably a shitload then, but I think it's like it's something that plausible that feels plausible, because from the Caribbean, you could land there.
Yeah. And like I said, I like Jomo, but I just felt that his character was introduced way too late in the film.
And that makes like his death scene, which is a fantastic scene, but it makes it emotionally less. There was less tension in it, because we didn't have the proper time to really that we would miss the character. So if that character would have been introduced in the beginning, I think that the impact of his death scene would have been way higher.
I mean, I get what they were going for. They wanted to introduce a third party, to be like, hey, Thomasine and Bushrod could team up with him and they can go raid some more banks. But for him to come in within the last 45 minutes and then only last a half hour, those 45 minutes, it felt like a waste.
Because it wasn't very...
it felt like we could have gotten more from the character had they introduced him a little earlier, and then by the time we get to him and then he's gone within another half hour, it's like, well, shit, that was kind of a waste.
Yeah, because he's an interesting character, so maybe they could have done... since the movie is only a little bit about 90 minutes long, you could have added like 5 minutes, and like in the beginning to have to show like Bushrod and Jomo like in action before they part, and then to have like the actual story going.
Yeah, they were friends in the past.
Exactly, but I think with movies it's always better to show and not tell. So we got that information through the exhibition of the dialogue. But if we would have seen like a flashback maybe in the beginning from before they parted,
they could have tied Jomo into the whole past with the marshal.
Yeah, exactly.
They crossed the marshal. That's why the marshal knew who he was, because of a past egregious.
Exactly.
So they could have tied that into more of Jomo's past with Bushrod. That he had issues with the marshal.
Yeah, via that we already would have rooted more from him when we then seen him for the second time on camera.
Yeah, so and like I said, I love Glenn Turman as an actor, and I thought he did great for what his role was. It's just unfortunate that his character really didn't have the proper development.
Yeah.
Because when he comes into the film, it's like, oh, this is a third party involved, and we get the exposition of him and Bushrod and stuff like that, and his country, being Jamaica and stuff. But then we only get so little of it, and then he ends up having a pretty brutal and awesome death scene because get dropped into the pit of snakes. I know you talked about this backstage about that whole thing.
Yeah, no, that scene was so well done. I would have. I didn't like the editing so much, like to show the snakes, him. I would have, just that we know, or just when you see them that they put snakes in would have been enough, because the most scary thing is after they drop him in and you just hear his screams, the rattling and the screams from out of the pit. And I think this was way more impactful than showing the snakes before.
Hey, it should have happened to Indiana Jones when they dropped him into the pit of snakes. But yeah, like, again, it's a good character that unfortunately didn't have the proper development.
Yeah.
And, going on to the whole thing with Thomasine and Bushrod, the main two leads, they're back and forth. Thomasine enjoys robbing the banks, but she also wants to have a life outside of what she was, outside of the bodyguard, the bounty hunter, outside of robbing banks. She just want to have a normal life. Because one of the things about that led to the robbing of the banks is the complete oppression that the whites had over the blacks, and then they had all this wealth. And we do get a little Robin Hood like story where they're giving the rich money to the poor, and I did like that aspect of them being given to the poor, the Spanish and the black Cherokees.
Yeah.
So I do like that aspect of it, and when you say that it could have been better paced, I can kind of agree with that, because sometimes you're taken in and out of these moments, and I'm like, there could have been a lot more pacing issues that was straightened out. But I did like the characters' interactions with each other, because that's the main point of the movie, is that Thomasine and Bushrod have these arguments, but they know how to overcome the arguments and still go forward.
But yeah, I would have even probably totally redone or cut out the Cherokee part with the natives, just because I think that it got a little bit too much in the supernatural for this movie.
It was out of nowhere.
Like a little bit, and I think you could have used the time more, especially with maybe to introduce the character of Chomo earlier, or to have the big bad being introduced earlier.
But I do like the elements of the Black Cherokee, because that's one thing that's not really explored enough, is the relationship between the natives and the blacks that were there throughout that time period, even before that, in the 18 and 1700s. So the fact that there are Black Cherokees, I do like that they added that element there, just to add to the fact that they existed.
Yeah, but then change maybe the dialogue a little bit too much and make it more grasp, because I I love supernatural stuff, but I just think that it didn't really so fit here so well. But yeah, like as I said before, it's because why you want to be a bank robber? It's not like. I think for few people a very exciting hobby. It's like you want to get somewhere, you want to take that money and build a life with it.
And Thomasine was not happy with him giving it to the poor. Because he's like, shit, we still out here living on the land, on the rocks, and laying up against trees, and yet you out here handing the money away. I'm like, shit, how are we gonna get better at life? So it's those disagreements that they had, with what to do, after they robbed the bank, and he wants to be the good Samaritan that he is and say, hey man, we got all these poor people here, let's help them out. She just want to have a normal life with him. And when it's explained later on that she's pregnant, then he really starts to realize, like, all right, we gotta do one more job, and that's it.
Sadly, it's always this one more job that
it's the one more job that be like, man, it's not gonna work out.
Like,
and then
like
we see
the last day before retirement.
We see that even throughout the film, when they go to stake out a place and they go and hit it, they like, something's not right. And as soon as they go to escape, man, the marshal and all his men come and start shooting, and that leads to car chase.
Well, I am the last person who says that you should slap a woman. But first of all, of course, it's a movie, and especially for the time, it's something that did happen.
Like when it comes to the slap, she hit him first because they were arguing. And first of all, I kind of agree with her. Like, why the fuck did you bring the bank owner with y'all? Like, bro, just steal the car and get the hell up out of there, man. There ain't no need to just bring him with y'all. And then when he starts strangling her, I know you've seen the clip I showed you of Richard Pryor and stuff. It's the same thing. But when he started strangling her and Bushrod had to stop him, that's what led to her shooting him and killing him. And then that whole disagreement they had there, why was he there? So when she slapped him and then he slapped her back and then she started apologizing, you could see the guilt on both of their faces for what they did.
It is like, of course, like in general, I think if such a situation arises, it's because it's out of emotion and because there was a stressful scene, etc.
I looked at it as they got it out of their system. They knew they both were in the wrong, but they was able to make amends about it and move on because they know that they cannot continue going forward if that tension is still there from that moment. And even though they still had arguments, you never saw them raise their hands towards each other again. So they was able to like nip it in the bud and continue moving forward. And even when they had their disagreements, you never saw Bushrod raise his voice and stuff like that. He just said, you're always yelling, and she would say, well, I'm tired of hearing myself yell, because she wants to better the situation, and he's like, look, we just gotta keep moving.
Also, and of course, it's like way different if both are like very introduced and very into a lifestyle where violence is the way to get the money. So it's a thing that a hand is looser when you are actively part of a lifestyle like that than when you're peaceful at home.
And they love each other so much.
Hey, Kenneth.
What's up, Kenneth? Thanks for joining. They love each other so much that they still continue to go forward.
Yeah.
And when the whole pregnancy angle comes, that's when like the movie like really hits that part where like something's bad's gonna happen.
It's
but
like,
but you enjoy these two characters so much to the point where you just like, and they like change that whole dynamic of Bonnie and Clyde's ending and say maybe they can make it out of it. Maybe they can get that happy ending.
There ain't no
just
happy
not
ending.
gonna happen. No problem, man. No problem. But like I said, the dynamic of the two characters is what really, to me, makes this movie. I mean, you don't name the movie Thomasine and Bushrod and then just have a section where it's not about them.
Exactly.
They carry this film, and I really feel like as much as the film is clunky in places, and it does diverge to the sections that is like, okay, we need to like get back focus and move forward, I still enjoy it for the main two leads of the movie.
Yeah. This would actually be, this is like one of these movies where you actually can say that's like where you should make a remake, because the premise is so interesting and the premise was not fulfilled to its full potential, but there is no more Fonetta McGee.
and to be honest, I don't even think like they would have to get the right type of actors for this remake, and the chemistry got to be just on par with what Julian and McGee had in this film, because
today they will probably just make it with Tom Holland and Zendaya.
Jesus, no. I don't want to see that. I see that in Spider-Man. I don't want to see it. But again, it's like, and again, like they could flesh out the other characters more, like Jomo, the Adolf the Butcher, and even the Marshal. You know, we can get a little bit more fleshed out while still focusing on Thomasine and Bushrod.
Yeah.
Because again, I felt like the cast overall was really good, and the story definitely had a lot of potential. It just didn't hit that third gear to the fullest.
Yeah, just imagine this directed by Sergio Corbucci with a soundtrack by Ennio Morricone.
And I want to talk about the director. I mentioned this backstage, but Gordon Parks Jr., son of Gordon Parks, who did Shaft and legendary photography work.
Yeah.
The fact that he directed 4 movies in his lifetime. He started on the 5th, but unfortunately, he died in a plane accident, a plane crash in 1979 when he was only 44 years old. So his life was taken away when he was like really starting to find.
We are both 41. We're in the prime of our lives. It's like
83 babies, man. But the fact that he directed 4 different type of movies. You know, his first film, Superfly, a classic.
Yeah.
You know, then his second film, Three the Hard Way. You know, this is a movie we gotta talk about because we didn't get a chance to talk about it during the Fred Williamson stream we did. So we gotta do Three the Hard Way at some point in the future.
I am up for it.
Then he did this film, which is a Western, and he did Aaron Loves Angela, which is like a Romeo Juliet movie with Irene Cara, Kevin Hooks, and who was Moses Gunn.
Yeah, Romeo and Juliet movie also sounds like a wonderful happy ending.
So like he did 4 different style of movies, you know, crime, action, Western, and teen romance. And it's like, man, he was just realizing his potential before his death. And it sucks because, you know, to be the son of the legendary Gordon Parks and to have your own filmmaking and what you learn from your father when it comes to cinematography and photo taking and stuff, and apply it to yourself and then add movies to it. Man, we don't know what we could have gotten had he survived.
Exactly, especially since, you know, when you see Superfly and also like of course Thomasine and Bushrod, you can, you know, you don't yet see you know, like a personal style that he could have developed over the time. So it's still very much, you know, your first movies, you're trying to find yourself, you're trying to find your voice as a director.
Yeah. And you know, I have to give him for the short time he had, I have to give him credit for doing 4 different styles of movies.
Absolutely, you know, just the sheer act of finishing a movie is hard work, and especially finishing a coherent movie that solves like all the plot lines. It's like that's already like a very difficult task, and the rest, like I say, it's like a diamond in the rough. It's just at that point of his career, nobody can blame him from yet not being able to polish this diamond.
Yeah. So Gordon Parks Jr. continue to rest in peace. Like I said, his talent was there, and he, for the small sample we got, I thought he did a really good job. Even on this film, for as it's flawed, but I still think for him to take the approach of doing a Western and introducing the 1900s with the cars, the automobiles being introduced.
And a period piece is difficult to do.
Yes,
not only from a budget perspective, but also there's so many things that you just have to additionally think about.
And Vanessa McGee was in The Great Silence. One thing I noticed in The Great Silence and in this film is that Wells Fargo was like the dominant bank of back in the Western days, because that Wells Fargo sign it's in Great Silence. That's the main bank. And it was in this movie that's one of the banks they robbed. Yeah. So I love seeing references to the banks that I still use to this day. It's like, yo, this is crazy. Yeah. But the ending of this film, I will say, it's heartbreaking at the same time. I love the way Bushrod reacted to it.
There's a lot of lead in the air.
Lots of lead. Because they was going to do their final job. They had to find Josimo, who died, unfortunately fell into the snake pit because of the marshal.
No, yeah, exactly. Not accidentally fell in the snake pit, but like
he got dropped in the
snake pit. He got dropped in the snake pit.
And when they approached the area, Thomasine gets up and immediately got shot.
Yeah.
And it's like, whoa. That was crazy. And then next thing you know, you see the marshal there and all the men on the top of the roof. And Bushrod was in straight vengeance mode.
Yeah, like the acting of Julian in this is like the strongest. I think it was also very, of course, highlighted by I think also the best camera work in the movie, when they went slow motion and you can see that he was hit, but it's like no, he's gotta finish it and then shoots
he just needed to get closer to put a bullet in
the marshal's head, and that was the strongest, especially through that also like they made like this was like silent, and you just saw like the mimic of Julian, and his face acting in that scene was so strong.
And the movie ends with them. They had a scene earlier in the film where they were playing in the water.
Yeah.
And that's how the movie ends.
Yeah.
Like Thomasine and Bushrod theme song. I love that theme that played throughout. I love that theme by Arthur Lee.
Yeah. It really feels like that, that basically the scenes we saw in the end were like the dying thoughts of Bushrod.
Yeah, he lost his love, and he's dead because he got lit up. He was determined to make sure the marshal go.
Yes.
But again, I really do like that ending because it really highlights the love that they have for each other, and for them just to show the scene with them playing in the water with that theme song playing, it's like again, it's like you wish for a happy ending, but you just know it's not going to happen because they robbed too many banks. They had too many issues with the marshal, and the marshal was just determined to get them by any means necessary.
Yeah.
And it's like, man, they're not going to make it. But you're just happy that Bushrod took his ass out.
Yeah. Absolutely. And also like but of course when I say this, like it's a diamond rough and everything, I'm just a big fan of spaghetti western, and I'm not a big fan of western that are actually shot in the US, and for US produced Western, it was actually really good.
Yeah, like I said, like I said, I grew up off of U.S. westerns, but I also love the spaghetti westerns as well. You know,
Yeah.
in the '70s was like the last era, at least, especially in America, where westerns was still produced a lot before big box office movies like Star Wars and all the other stuff took over and westerns started to nosedive. But in the '70s, I loved the variety of western. You had, black westerns. I mean, Fred the Hammer Williamson, the legend himself, did western movies. When we talk Take a Hard Ride, we still gotta talk the movie he did with Richard Pryor, which was a western.
We also have the two wonders, also spaghetti western. I'm gonna say, I think it's Hügel der blutigen Stiefel. I don't know what their English name is. Yeah, it's
because Murdoch, not only was he in Willie Dynamite, but he also was in the Mac with Julian, because he played Fat Man in that film. So in Vanilla McGee's history with western, if you have not checked out The Great Silence,
do it.
Watch that film.
It's like, for me, traditionally the movie that the first snow day of the year, I always watch The Great Silence. And I think it's also Kinski's best work.
And the original ending, that ending had me clapping, because I'm like, you do not see movies that have the balls to do endings like that.
Yeah, it's Sergio Corbucci. He was one of a kind.
And when you see the ending that the studio said, no, we need a good ending, and you see that version, you're like, I'm glad he stuck with the original ending, because that shit wouldn't have made no sense at all.
I still have to watch the 4K version, so.
But yeah, The Great Silence, matter of fact, sooner or later, you're going to send me that so I can re-upload it, because me and VV used to do videos on his channel before we moved over to mine, and he made his channel private. So he's been sending me some of his older videos of us talking movies. So The Great Silence got to be re-uploaded.
Yeah, it's just absolutely love this movie. I'm also really looking forward to next month we also talk Cobra Verde with Kinski.
Yes.
And by Werner Herzog, the movie. It's very interesting because it's about the slave trade, and it's a very uncomfortable movie. Like, I mean, Herzog is a genius, and he's not holding back.
I mean, if you're talking the slave trade and stuff, there's gonna be uncomfortable stuff in that film. But I'm willing to watch it. Like I'm a firm believer. We grew up watching Roots and movies that dealt with slavery. But I don't want to see modern movies on slavery, because I feel like now it's played out to the point, like, I don't want to see anything modern dealing with slavery.
Yeah.
We grew up off of a lot of the movies like Roots and other stuff that showed us the cruelty of slavery. So if anything, I don't want to see modern movies based on slavery. I'd rather just watch the older ones, because I know they put a bit more effort into them compared to today.
And if you like, I mean, that's sadly the thing. You can still make a modern movie that tackles the slavery in Asia, because slavery is not gone yet.
Modern day slaves.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm glad we talked this film. It's Valentine's Day, so I thought it was the perfect film to talk on Valentine's Day.
It's World Masturbation Day for all the singles out there.
But yeah, I'm looking forward to next week though.
Yeah.
Dusty Brick Brown from the Comic Call crew will join us to talk PD Wheatstraw, Devil's Son-in-Law.
Yeah,
Dolomite, baby.
And every time we have Dusty in a show, it's always a highlight.
Always.
Al is also one of a kind, and just an awesome human being.
Yeah, and I'm glad he got his channel off the ground and running. I like the fact that he's uploading stuff. That his recent video talking about his love for comic books was great, like phenomenal. Yeah. And also, we did a great episode of the Comic Call Crew for the last 2 weeks. Last week's episode was amazing, and we should be doing another part 3 tomorrow. So we'll be back to doing that.
Still one of the most undersubbed channels out there.
And I just crossed 700 subs.
Despite having me on the channel.
Despite having you on the channel, I crossed 700 subs. Yeah. And you know what, man? I'm glad to have you on the channel. When we moved from your channel to mine, at first I was kind of worried.
Then you get banned.
But one thing about us is that we just enjoy talking films, talking comics, and talking a variety of things. I mean, we did wrestling streams.
Yeah.
So I just enjoy talking to you, and again, I love the history you bring. Whenever we talk films based in your country or in Europe, you bring that knowledge and that history of that I learned. And then when I introduce you to some movies, you learn stuff that you never know about.
Yeah, especially with last week, with Blue Collar, there was so many things that that you just did. When I studied history, of course, I had also seminars about American history, but like these details, with the unions and the treatment of the work, etc. This is something you usually don't learn out of history books so much.
And that Blue Collar show was very interesting. Like, again, we could have went on with that movie, but we I would say that show, we really put some personal stuff in there in terms of what we went through working companies.
Yeah.
So I love that stream.
Thank you.
No problem, bro. No problem.
Because that's the most important thing, that we always want to talk about movies. That doesn't matter if anybody watches this. It's just like we want to talk about movies that just mean something to either of us two, or some movies where we just read, hey, this sounds interesting, let's do this. And then we get movies like Alien Intruder.
The one film and it's fun when you sent me the Alien Intruder, like, let's talk this film, and you see Billy D. Williams on the cover, right? I'm down.
That's it. And
then you watch that, and it's like, what the fuck am I watching?
I think this must be still in my top 5 worst movies.
I mean, we talked about that movie for like 15 minutes before we just moved on to
Let's talk about something.
And just bitching like, damn, the movie was that bad. Y'all already talking something else. Oh man.
I think we gave this movie the most publicity that it ever got, even though barely anybody watches us.
Well, yeah, I knew about maybe 15 minutes in. I'm like, oh, this is not gonna be good. This is not gonna be good.
It also has Western elements in there.
Hey, it was like, I'd rather go back and watch Super Mario Brothers 1993 over this shit.
Like I said, the Super Mario Brothers movie is actually good.
Yeah, I'll say it. Like, when I found out that you liked that movie, I'm like, finally, somebody I could talk to that like that Super Mario Brothers movie. But while you, like I said, take away the Super Mario Brothers name, it's still a pretty entertaining film.
Yeah, it's just a really great cyberpunk universe
with Goombas with small heads. But yeah, thanks Donnie Williams for being here, watching us,
inputs, man. Thank you. Yeah,
you had some great comments, some great input.
Also, thank you, Kenneth, for showing up.
Yeah, and the other 2 people who's watching. But next week, PD Bushrod, the Devil's Son-in-Law,
which I'm looking very much forward to.
Yes, sir. And I just want to say happy Valentine's Day to everybody out there. Enjoy your day and enjoy your weekend. Make sure you check out the Common Call Crew this coming Saturday night around 9 o'clock ish. And, until then, we'll see y'all next week, y'all. Peace.